A lot of you might be unaware, but Tucker's first name is actually Mateo, and the reason why he's barely in this season is because he's actually got a full-time job at the hospital.
Ariana, what are you doing here? I told Ariana that I was getting offline.
At around the time that heated rivalry was taking over everyone's lives, mine included, there was a lot of talk of another hockey romance show that was currently in production. This show would become off campus, and when I say many people, myself included, had very little faith in the show as it was being adapted by a major streaming service, Amazon Prime, and many people just didn't think that off campus could quite pull off what heated rivalry could pull off.
I know that the people at Prime Video must be pissed that Off Campus is coming out after Heated Rivalry. Because they gotta know that there's no way that they're living up to the hype of Heated Rivalry. Like, they gotta know that. Like, the teaser for Off Campus got released today, and everyone on my Twitter timeline is just talking about the fact that it looks like garbage.
Now, I don't think it's exactly fair to compare heated rivalry with off campus, even though a lot of people will probably be doing that because they are both hockey romance shows based off of very popular book series. However, I think the shows are two very separate entities in my head. It would be like comparing apples to oranges, honestly. And the expectations that I have for a show like Off Campus are very different from the expectations I would have for a show like Heated Rivalry. The feel of Heated Rivalry to me is sort of a critically acclaimed, indie, very passionate production versus Off Campus, which is more coming from a bigger studio. And the vibes of it are more of a fun sort of ensemble drama type of show. I liked Off Campus in the way I would enjoy a show like Gossip Girl, where like I'm here for the fun and the drama and the characters of it all. Whereas Heated Rivalry just feels so different in its overall tone. I see Heated Rivalry more as its own thing. In my head, Heated Rivalry is very critically acclaimed because, as we all know, there are a lot of aspects within the production that I particularly enjoyed, including its cinematography. But I will stop talking about Heated Rivalry. That's another video that I have on this channel. But I just wanted to get the comparisons out of the way because when I say I surprisingly enjoyed Off Campus, I really had no hope going into this show that it was going to be any good because Heated Rivalry was so good and so successful, especially as an adaptation, that knowing the source material of Off Campus, I feel like the bar was so low. My expectations were practically on the floor. So anything that they did that was decent was not just decent, it was like, I'm so impressed. And I was eating it up and I was loving it. But that's just because in regards to what I thought they could do with the material, I thought it might come out too cheesy. I think there are some things that I don't like within the source material that I was worried about how they were going to portray in the adaptation. And because my expectations were so low, I had such a fun time. Honestly, the season finale, that last scene, my jaw was on the floor. I was having so much fun, which brings me to the point of my video today of why I enjoyed Off Campus so much and why it particularly surprised me that I enjoyed it so much is because I think the changes that they made to the source material improved the show in every single way. And I think Off Campus as a TV show is a testament to how an adaptation can actually improve upon the source material that it is adapting and come out with something that I believe is even better when looking at it story-wise. So, let's get on into it. For anyone who doesn't know, Off Campus is based off of a very popular hockey romance book series of the same name. The very first book within the Off Campus series was The Deal. It was published in February of 2015 by L. Kennedy, and The Deal kind of spiraled into this larger hockey romance universe with even another spin-off series called Briar U. There's quite a few books within the series and quite a few characters. The TV show, at least season 1, focuses a lot on that first book, The Deal, but it also does a good job of setting up and throwing in plot lines that would happen later on in the books to make the show feel more like an ensemble and less like the Bridgerton format of every season focusing on one particular couple while everybody else is simply a side character. The showrunner for Off Campus is Louisa Levy, and I would like to give her and the rest of the Off Campus writers' room their flowers. In cases like this, it is actually so exciting to see this be adapted into a show where they take the problems that I had with the original source material and they fix them. When I tell you that almost every single change that Louisa Levy and the rest of the writer's room made to the source material, I thought was a good change, even a great change that made things overall better. I'm not even lying. Almost every single change they made, I was on board for and was so glad that they did, which I know is a little bit of an unpopular opinion because there's a lot of people out there that are really attached to the source material. And I've seen a lot of people online talking about how they didn't like some of the changes that were made. And I'm here to say, I am not one of those people, and I would like to give props to a lot of the things that I found as improvements. Firstly, I don't want it to come across like I'm dogging on Elle Kennedy or the people who enjoy the books. I genuinely think the books are fun and enjoyable. I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't think that, but for me, they're not my most favorite thing that I've ever read, and it's because there's quite a few aspects within the way Elle Kennedy writes that sometimes the way she executes certain storylines doesn't always hit the mark for me. Like, I can see how she means well with certain plot lines, but it doesn't always come across in the best way, in my opinion. And sometimes some plot lines can feel very shoehorned in, and there's just some parts of the writing that I think could have been improved upon. Now, there are good parts to Elle Kennedy's writing too, and I will give her her props because I think if there's one thing that I really do like about her writing throughout the books is her ability to write the friendships between all the characters. She's really good at creating chemistry, not just between two romantic leads, but chemistry between two friends or a friend group. And I think some of the most fun parts of the off-campus books are seeing all of the friends interact with each other. With that being said, I think I should get into the more specifics of the changes that were made that I think were changes for the better. And yes, there are going to be some spoilers for the book throughout this video, so if you are still reading the books or planning on reading them in the future, it's okay to click off this video and come back at a later time after you read that. But you have been thoroughly warned. Hi, this is Editing Maria coming in with a bit of an interruption. I just want to reiterate that I am not a hater, and I hope this doesn't come across as me hating on the books or the characters, because I think throughout this video, because I'm talking about changes that I liked, I can come off a little bit critical, but I do not hate the books. And so please don't get offended with me liking some of the changes within the show. I also want to reiterate that I love Garrett Graham, okay? Sue me, I love Garrett Graham. No, but I can come across a little bit critical of the way Garrett is written, especially towards the beginning of The Deal. And I want to say that Garrett is actually one of my favorite characters throughout these series. I mean, if I had to rank the guys, Garrett's probably sitting at that top spot, or he's at least fighting Jake Connolly for that top spot. So if I come off a little bit critical, just know I'm doing it from a place of love, okay? And I hope that this video doesn't come across as me hating on the book, and I don't want it to. Anyways, let's get on into the video. First of all, regarding the way that this show was plotted out, I was very impressed and I like the direction this is going. And what I'm really most upset about, honestly, regarding the show is it feels like the kind of show that deserves way more episodes within a season. Like, this is the kind of show that I want 15 to 20 episodes and have a few filler episodes here and there to get to know some of these side characters better or to see some shenanigans going on. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. I don't know who came up with this whole 8 episode season for every show thing, but I am so sick and tired of it. I've even seen an interview with Louisa Levy talking about how she thought they were going to get 10 episodes, but then they cut them down to 8, so they had to figure out how much stuff they can squeeze into 8 episodes. And I truly hate that. I think as a society, we need to go back to longer season shows, especially with a fun ensemble cast sort of show like this, because I feel like there would be so much more room to play around and let some of the side characters feel more like main characters, because I think that is what they were going for when creating Off Campus. And I really love that they didn't take the Bridgerton route, because as we have seen with the way that Bridgerton has been doing their seasons, it's kind of depressing to get one whole season focused on two main characters and then we barely ever get to see them again. Sometimes we don't see them again throughout the rest of the show. Or there's characters like Eloise who they're waiting for her own season to actually give her that character development. So she's kind of just been so stagnant in terms of her as a character throughout the last few seasons. And it's so hard to find a route for all your characters to go when you're doing something along the lines of every season focuses on this couple and then we shove them to the side and focus on new people. And I love that Off Campus is aiming not to do that, as we can see. And I think this is going to end up being a lot more fun as we can focus on all the characters at once. And we don't have to say goodbye to Garrett and Hannah in season 2. And I suspect we're still going to get significant drama and development and storylines to come, which I'm really happy about. One thing that was really refreshing for me to see within the TV show Off Campus is how some of these male characters are portrayed. And I know a lot of people are going to say, Maria, it's not realistic to see guys who are playing hockey in college be the most respectful, caring men towards women. But I think it's, first of all, it's fiction. And I think it's what we need to see on our screens at this moment in time, which is why I say that it is so refreshing. Because in the books, I do think that the hockey guys act more so along the lines of college hockey guys, even looking through the first book and how Garrett acts at the beginning, especially within his POV. It's a little bit hard to read in the way that he talks about other women, in the way even some of the other characters talk about the other woman, and the way that they view the puck bunnies and stuff like that. Garrett comes off really arrogant in his POV in the books, especially at the beginning. And I know it's like part of his personality, but I think they did a good job within the show. And this is a testament to the writers who wrote for Garrett, but also to the actor who played Garrett in the show, that it comes off more of his arrogance being a bit of a facade and you can kind of see right through it. And it's not as bad as it comes off in the books, where it could be a bit difficult to read Garrett's POV at the beginning because he is so full of himself. He's just like,
I'm hot and everybody loves me and everybody wants me. And that's just because I'm good at hockey and I'm also hot.
and like that's his entire inner monologue. And it's like, oh my gosh, this guy is a little bit insufferable and he needs to be knocked down a few pegs. And I do love that Hannah knocks him down a few pegs, but he doesn't come across as overly arrogant in the show. It comes across more as this is the front that he puts up, but when you really get to know him as a character, he's in fact not that way. And I really liked the way that was portrayed within the show. You know, Garrett is not the worst in the books either. I don't want this sounding like I'm a Garrett hater, because I am most definitely not. But I will say, To anyone who hasn't read The Deal, like, go back to the beginning of The Deal and be in Garrett's POV. You want somebody to knock him down a few pegs, and I think Hannah definitely humbles him a little bit, which is fun to see. They kind of upgraded all the guys in a way that I really liked. There's kind of two unrelated examples of the book versus the show, but I do think it sort of proves this point. In the book, when Garrett is first trying to get Hannah to tutor him, he's kind of bothering her a little bit, and in my opinion takes it a little bit too far. And I know that's not how the book wants to portray it, but there's one scene in particular at the beginning where Garrett finds out where Hannah works. He shows up at her work. Hannah's a waitress. She doesn't want to be bothered. She gifts his table to somebody else, but then he waits outside her job for her to leave and corners her while she's alone and follows her to her car to continue to beg her to tutor him. Reading this scene is kind of crazy because it could almost come across as kind of scary for a man who Hannah doesn't really know that well to be kind of stalking her in a way where he's waiting for her to get off her work to corner her while she's alone. He's following her out to her car. And it's hard to read because Garrett doesn't see anything wrong with this in the book. He's not thinking about things from a woman's perspective to understand why this might come across a bit scary if you were putting yourself in a woman's shoes. I'll just read a few excerpts in particular, and I will say this is not a horror book. I learned a lot about you in study group. Got your number, your full name, even found out where you work. I pay for my food, bid my waitress goodbye, then head outside to wait for Hannah. A minute after that, Hannah appears, but if she sees me lurking near the door, she doesn't let on. She simply buttons up her coat and takes off towards the side of the building. I waste no time hurrying after her. Wellesley, wait up. She looks over her shoulder, frowning deeply. For the love of God, I'm not tutoring you. I follow her to the driver's side, but she completely ignores me as she unlocks the door and tosses her purse into the passenger seat. When she tries to duck into the car, I curl my fingers over the door frame to keep it open. And what I like is that, one, they do not do this scene in the TV show. And two, I get the sense that TV show Garrett would more so be aware of how doing something like this would come across to Hannah and how he wouldn't do it because he doesn't want to come across as crazy or a stalker or scare her. And here's a separate example of something that happened in the show that I really appreciated. Now, it's with the character of Logan, but it's right after Garrett learns that Hannah doesn't want to drink publicly. And I love that when he's talking to Logan, it immediately clocks right away for Logan why this must be the case. And he's the one who tells Garrett to offer Hannah a closed can because it's safer. And it's like the little things like that, where it's like the boys recognize and they want to respect women and their boundaries. And all of the main boys within the show come across in this way. And I think I like this kind of stuff overall better than in the book where they might not always realize these things. And I just love that they went that route within the show. A lot of people might say it's not realistic to real life, but I don't care because I think it's just refreshing to see the main character men that we're supposed to be rooting for be guys who are a little more understanding. I overall appreciated those upgrades. Moving on, I really liked the way that the show handled Hannah's past trauma and sexual assault. I was worried how it would come across, but I think they did a really decent job of making this really serious and showing the effects that it continues to have on Hannah. In the book, Hannah's music kind of feels very separate from everything else that's going on, but I like that in the show, Hannah's past and her sexual assault doesn't just continue to affect her in the present day regarding her relationships with people, but it sinks into every single aspect of her life, including her music. And I really like that detail that they added in to this character of also she has writer's block and she's having a hard time even writing music because of what happened to her. I think that was really well done in a way that doesn't just make her music feel like something that's happening in the background, but brings it to the forefront of her character and focuses on how her past has continued to affect this, and it's something that she has to continue to work through in order to overcome these obstacles that continue to follow her. I really appreciated that. Another change that I really loved, and I thought that was an improvement to the way that it happened in the book, and maybe people won't agree with me on this, but the third act breakup. I really love the way that they brought it to the show and tied it in with the things that the two main characters were going through. And to me, overall, it just made a little more sense than the way it's done in the book. In the book, it feels a little bit ridiculous, in my opinion. But I will say, in romance, TV, and movies and books, it is really hard to get the third act to break up just right because many a times it could come across as something really dumb or a simple miscommunication. And I think in the book, The Deal, it kind of rides that line of being that, as in the book it's actually Hannah that breaks up with Garrett, and the reasoning, which what I why I think it's dumb, is because Garrett's dad tells Hannah she has to break up with him and threatens to cut Garrett off if she doesn't do so. So he has this whole explanation because at first she's like, that's really dumb. I'm not doing that. And he's like, well, if Garrett doesn't have any money, then he can't afford school. And then he'll have to get a job. And then he won't be able to focus on hockey. And then he won't be as good and he won't get drafted. It was like a whole thing. And so Hannah goes, okay. And she breaks up with him out of nowhere. It's kind of really dumb because it also turns Garrett's dad into a more cartoon evil villain than just like in the show, he's just a bad guy. And in the books, Garrett's dad is a bad guy. But this feels even more like my evil plan to break my son up with his girlfriend. And it all turns out that Garrett actually had a secret trust fund from his grandparents. So after he turns 21, he becomes really rich himself and he was planning to pay his dad back so he never had to speak to him again, basically. And so everything was solved anyway. It's all just a horrible miscommunication because Hannah never went to Garrett and told him about what his dad said and what his dad is forcing her to do, sort of. Garrett never got the chance to be like, oh, you don't have to do that because actually I'm getting all this money from a trust fund. So overall, it ends up just being really dumb, so dumb that even the characters themselves in the book laugh about it later about how dumb they were. And if they would have just talked to each other, they could have solved the whole situation. In the TV show, it makes so much more sense because in the TV show, they first of all, they tie in Hannah's rapist to be a hockey player that Garrett is going to have to face on a rival team. And they kind of set that up from the beginning. And I was really happy when they set this up because it's another instance of her past coming back to haunt her. But I knew if the two teams were having to face each other, Garrett is going to beat this guy up. And I was so ready. I was so sad to see this character get the least of what he deserves, right? And so it happens. And I also knew with everything we know about Garrett's dad and with Garrett not wanting to be like his dad or to turn into his dad, I knew this was going to set Garrett off on a spiral of, am I capable of doing this to the people I love? Type deal. It absolutely made sense, like in every single way. And it made sense for Hannah in the way that she was talking because afterwards she tells Garrett that she feels upset because he would risk everything because he got suspended and he could have been suspended so badly that he lost his future spot in the NHL. I don't know how that works, but he basically put his whole career in jeopardy for her. And she just got done saying how every time she tells people about what happened to her, it kind of like comes back to haunt them in a way where it, in her words, ruins people's lives. And now she feels like she told Garrett what happened to her. He risked his entire career. He put his career on the line for her. It's going to ruin his life too. It made sense why she was upset. It also made sense why Garrett was so scared because now he's starting to second guess, is he capable of being his dad? Even though I will say, I 1000% support what Garrett did And I think he was right for doing it, but I do understand with the way that he's thinking. He's like, well, if I can do this to some guy that I hate who deserves it, am I also capable of doing this to someone who I love in the future? And that's basically the basis of their breakup. And overall, I think it makes so much more sense because it's both of these two characters' fears that they have within their lives that are kind of getting in the way of their relationship versus the villain of the book kind of getting in the way of their relationship, if that makes any sense. And now I will move on to the kind of the second part of this all, the change to the hands off rule, because a lot of people I've seen online really hate that they changed the whole hands off thing. They really liked that part in the book. And when I saw that they actually changed this, I was so relieved. I was like, and thank God they did. So I could be an outlier here, and I'm sorry if you are one of the people that really liked the hands-off policy within the book, but there's just no way that when adapting it to screen, that was going to come off in any way that made Garrett likable. Because the hands-off rule is crazy, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, in the book, after Hannah breaks up with Garrett, he starts to not believe her reasonings because he's like, why would she break up with me? I know she loves me. And so he creates this rule on campus where he tells every single guy that they're not allowed to date her, talk to her, or touch her. And they call it the campus-wide hands-off policy. They do a thing almost similar to in the show when Hannah is just trying to have a normal conversation with some guys and they're like afraid to talk to her and she has no idea what's going on until somebody tells her about the hands-off rule, and then she gets rightfully really upset. But in the book, Garrett actually did implement the hands-off rule, and he has a whole explanation for it, and I think this is why people might like it. They like Garrett being possessive. In the book, Garrett explains his actions by saying that he knew Hannah was going to try and date other guys to prove a point because when she broke up with him, she didn't really have a reasoning and she's like, it's because I want to try and date other guys. And he didn't want her to regret it later on when they inevitably got back together that she went out with other guys during their breakup. So that's his whole thing is like, I'm saving you from the pain and regret. I still don't like it, and I never really liked it that much, and I know this is probably a hot take because a lot of people apparently like this, but I don't like how controlling this makes Garrett because if he truly did love Hannah, he would simply want her to be happy and be able to have the freedom to make her own choices and do what she wants in order to be happy. And I feel like with this whole hands off thing, it's kind of like I can't have her so nobody can. Is the vibes that it comes off to me, even though Garrett explains that's not how he saw it when he did it in the book. But I absolutely love that in the show they set it up like they're doing this plot line. Hannah gets mad at Garrett. She goes to see him, just like bursts through the boys' locker room, and it finds out that it all just started from some of the stupid guys on the team. Somebody made a joke that's like, Garrett's gonna be mad if anyone talks to Hannah, and it like spiraled out of control. But in particular, I love that we get the scene of Garrett saying, no, I would never do that. And it's so great. It's like, yes, and thank God. And thank God. I feel like this makes Garrett so much more likable. This hands-off thing is so controlling, especially to a character that doesn't want to be like his dad who was physically and emotionally abusive and really controlling. And if his whole arc within his character is that he doesn't want to be like his dad, why would he implement a hands-off policy? I'm interrupting once again because I just want to add on why I don't think this makes sense for the show, and I'm glad that they didn't do it, because Garrett knows what happened to Hannah. Garrett knows that Hannah was raped, and he knows that she had her autonomy taken away from her, and he has seen how she's still dealing with the effects of that. So in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense why Garrett would implement the hands-off law knowing all of this information, because it would make him just another person who is essentially taking away her autonomy, which is what happened to her when she was assaulted. and she's still dealing with that. And even though it's a much smaller way of taking away her autonomy, I still think it is perpetuating that sort of culture. And it doesn't make sense for Garrett to know what happened to her and for him to implement that law, especially within the show. And I just wanted to make that clear too. I personally think they changed it for the better within the show. And it's so refreshing that we get to hear Garrett say, "No, I would never do that." I was ready to stand and applaud at that moment in the show. I thought they did a good job of carrying over something that a lot of people loved from the source material while upgrading it, and they still had it in there. For the fans of the book, I think they still had that scene in there. So I thought people would be happy. I feel like they did a wink and a nod to the fans of the source material while also saying, "But Garrett Graham would never do this." And I in particular liked that Garrett Graham would never do that. Another major change that I really love, and this goes along with this sort of subtle misogyny that you feel in the book towards the puck bunnies, and I really hate the term puck bunnies, but especially within the book, I hate the way the puck bunnies are portrayed. It just feels slightly misogynistic to me, as they're always like some nameless, faceless girl, and it's like, oh, they only exist as objects to the hockey team, and it kind of sucks. I hate that they still use the term puck bunny in the show, but I like that the characters are like, well, that's kind of what they call themselves. But what I really loved of what they changed within this and within the character Kendall in particular is that they made them nice, normal girls. And it was so refreshing to see, because a lot of times in these types of things, it's like a character like Kendall would come off sort of as this mean girl. There is a scene in the book where after she finds out that Garrett and Hannah are dating, she kind of is really whiny and goes to question Garrett, kind of like, well, you didn't want to date me, but you want to date her. It just comes across like annoying, like we're not supposed to like this character of Kendall, but I really liked the character of Kendall in this show. Like I could see where she was coming from in regards to her situationship with Garrett and her getting attached. But I also really love seeing that after the fact, Kendall is really nice to Hannah. She's not bitter because Hannah like locked down Garrett and she couldn't. And I like that all the other girls, the puck bunnies, were really nice to Hannah. And there's this really great scene where somebody mentions like, oh, are you worried about all those girls that are always around Garrett? And Hannah one says, no, I trust Garrett. But also she trusts the other girls because she says, oh, those girls are really cool and they were really nice to me. And I just love that. I love that the other girls, they're not bitter or portrayed as mean girls or portrayed in a derogatory way, but in fact, they were really nice to Hannah and they wanted Hannah to sit with them at the game. And I don't know, that was really refreshing to see. A lot of people were also really upset with the Logan kissing Hannah scene. I didn't have a problem with this. In the books, Hannah has that scene where she's trying to prove a point. So she kisses Dean in front of Garrett to prove a point. In the TV show, they changed it to her kissing Logan in front of Garrett. I don't think this was a change that's as drastic as some people are making it out to be. And I actually think that it makes more sense, especially when setting up Logan's crush on Hannah, which we know will carry over into the next season, and when Logan sort of starts to get more of his own story. And what I was really excited to see within the show is that they have been setting this up already, which in the book, it's one of the things that feels a little bit more shoehorned in, as they don't really talk about it much or show it much until like the very, very end of the deal. And then when you get into Logan's book, they talk like, oh yeah, and Logan's had a crush on Hannah this whole time and we feel bad for him, but it's not something that we really saw in the earlier book. Like Elle Kennedy didn't spend much time on that, but I like how in the show they were really doing a good job of setting it up. I like how Logan knew who Hannah was and he knew her name, and he was like upset that how could Garrett not know her name. And I like that when Garrett goes to first follow Hannah on Instagram, Logan is already following her. And every time we see a scene of Hannah doing something and Garrett is so clearly down bad yearning for her, the camera also pans over and we see that Logan is doing the same thing. And I think this is setting it up in a way that actually feels more realistic, where we can more understand where Logan is coming from, because when we finally get to Logan's story, we can feel a little bit bad for him because we can see his crush on Hannah happening in real time. And that's why I think changing that scene from Dean to Logan makes more sense for it to be Logan because it also adds to Logan's feelings for Hannah. And I enjoyed it as a change because I think it's overall adding to Logan's story, which I know a lot of people they wanted it the way it was done in the books. Another small change I thought was a bit of an improvement was with the Justin character. In the books, Justin is another athlete and feels a little bit separate, but they kind of merged his character in the show with this other character from the books that Hannah partners with for her music showcase. She's like writing a song with this other guy, and then he drops out at the last minute, and she has to write a whole new song at the last minute. And I like that all of this had to do with Justin. It made more sense why Hannah would like Justin because he is kind of on paper the kind of guy that she would want to be with, like the more artsy sort of guy. And Hannah hangs out with the more artsy crowd, whereas Garrett is kind of her opposite, being an athlete and all. And I think it was done pretty well. I didn't miss that Justin wasn't a football player. And I actually like that he was the person working on Hannah's song with her because it gave us the ability to see them have more scenes together and to also understand why Hannah liked Justin. Additionally, I love that we got a lot more Bo than I was expecting. In the books, Bo is kind of just there. He's kind of just a side character that exists until Elle Kennedy decides that she wants to use him as this plot device to develop Dean's story and character. And then it's like all of a sudden in Dean's book, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, Dean and Bo are really close and Dean and Bo are best friends. It feels like it kind of came out of nowhere, and it a little bit did. And there's reasonings for that because Tucker was originally supposed to be that character for Dean, and then Elle Kennedy apparently changed her mind and gave Tucker his own story, and then that's kind of why she had to shoehorn the Bo of it all. But I like that as a TV show because we know what's going to happen to Bo and how he's going to be used. We can be setting him up from the beginning, and I was really surprised with just how many Bo scenes that we got. And I love seeing Bo and Dee together. And I love that Bo has a bit of a personality that we didn't really get to see much of in the books. Like, I absolutely love him hanging out with Allie. I love them bonding over musical theater stuff. And honestly, all the musical theater references in the show, this is just like might be a little bit off topic, but I know there's some theater person in that writer's room because Allie sings a song from Rent at karaoke, and it's like, yeah, she's a theater girl, so maybe she would. But then another character, I believe it's Jules, makes an Adele Dazeem comment. Great reference for the theater kids. Later on, we see that Bo is not just a theater fan, but he knows ball because he starts bringing up Jonathan Groff, Merrily We Roll Along, and Jonathan Groff's Splash Zone. And it's like, oh, the man knows what he's talking about. I actually love this. I love seeing Allie and Bo singing show tunes in the car together. It was glorious, all on a side note. But bringing it back to Bo, I like that we're actually getting real setup for Bo because, oh, it's going to hurt so bad when we see the outcome of Bo. And maybe this is one of the other things. I know they're not going to change it because it actually makes a lot of sense for Dean to go through what he goes through regarding the Bo situation in the future. But oh man, they just made Bo way too likable, and it's going to like I hadn't even finished the show yet. I had maybe watched 1 or 2 episodes, and I opened up TikTok and immediately saw a Dean and Bo edit to Noah Khan's Dan. And I said, the editors are doing too much. Like, let me enjoy this character. What are we doing? Then I saw another Bo edit to the song Unsaid Emily. And anyone who knows that song, all the Julie and the Phantoms fans, knows the hurt and the pain behind that song. These Bo edits are absolutely insane. The TikTok editors are doing something else, okay? Can we let me live and let me enjoy this character without having to be pre-sad about what is going to happen in the future? Lastly, the Dean and Allie of it all and adding Hunter in, I enjoyed. I'm here for the drama. A lot of people are upset because the way that they're doing Dean and Allie is a little bit different from the books. I like that we are already starting Dean and Allie's storyline within this season. Like I said, it feels more ensemble, and I'm excited to see where they're taking it because it is a little bit different from the books. Like Dean and Hunter are friends in the books, and I'm excited to see Dean and Hunter be enemies. A lot of people are upset about the whole situation. They're like, Allie, Book Allie would never do that to Dean. I'm here for the ride, and I'm excited to see how this is going to affect Dean moving forward. And honestly, I like that Allie is sort of giving Dean a little bit of a taste of his own medicine. Now, Dean never maliciously hurt anybody with his actions and the way that he treats relationships and stuff, but it's fun to see now that he has decided he wants to settle down and he has decided that he has feelings for Ellie and stuff, even though she probably feels bad for hurting Dean. I like how she is kind of figuring herself out and working things out. And I like how Dean is kind of in a position that he's never been in before. And so I'm enjoying their storyline and the changes that have been made, is what I'm saying. And the Hunter reveal at the end of the season had my jaw on the floor because I was not expecting Carter St. James to be Hunter Davenport. Dean and him getting into a fight and him finding out about Allie and Hunter all at once. It was so good. I'm so excited for what this is going to bring to season 2 because I'm here for the fun and I'm here for the drama. And I think one thing about Dean and Allie is that they're both fun. I think for a TV show, especially for a show that we're doing an ensemble, I like all this kind of drama and stirring the pot with these characters, especially if we want to go multiple seasons and we want to have them develop their relationships kind of slowly over time. But that's just my opinion.
It's Editing Maria, and I'm interrupting you because I think there is one thing that was in the books that I actually didn't get enough of in the show, and that is Garrett and Logan's friendship, which is one of my most favorite things throughout the books, is seeing Garrett and Logan's friendship and the way that they interact with each other. And I really liked in the show how they have that whole plot line of there's this sort of rift between Garrett and Logan. I love the way they make up for it at the end. I love the way it's Logan that pulls Garrett off the guy in the fight. I love when Garrett gives Logan Captain and the way they make up. I thought that was all great, but I don't think it was as impactful as it could have been because the show really didn't show a lot of scenes towards the beginning of the series of Garrett and Logan and how they normally are with each other. I feel like we didn't get enough for my liking of setting up what their relationship actually was like before the rift started. All we had to have was 1 or 2 scenes of them being goofy together or them just being normal together. And I think this would have made the emotion behind their rift much stronger if the audience had seen more of what their relationship was like. It's kind of a shame because I think that friendship in the books is one of my favorite parts of the entire books, and I don't think we saw enough of it. And that's one thing from the books that I really felt like was missing within the show.
Now I'm going to do a little bit of a rundown of some of the things that were added that I really appreciated within the story. These were scenes that were not from the book, but were put in the show, and I think were really fun, really memorable scenes. One being the Elton John scene, because I think that scene does a good job of setting up how down bad Garrett is for Hannah. I think for me, that's the point where Garrett realizes that he kind of likes her. It's like the first time he's really seeing her, and I like that he was playing a bad game. He saw Hannah through a window dancing to Elton John, and now he's playing a good game again. And I don't know, I like being able to see that and to be able to see the start of Garrett's interest in Hannah. Kind of piggybacking off of that, the scene where Garrett and Hannah become official at the end of episode 4, I believe. Absolute cinema. He's at the ice rink. He thinks that she wants to be with Justin. She goes to the ice rink to play the song that he said was one of his mom's favorite songs that always calmed him down and stuff, and she plays it for him. He's alone and he's skating and he hears the song and he runs to see her. That's a scene that is not at all in the books, but I think that was really fun to add into the show and to have this kind of grand gesture be the start of their official relationship.
This is Editing Maria interrupting you once again because I forgot to mention one of my most favorite new scenes, new additions to the show, which is the scene where Hannah doesn't show up at the hockey game and Garrett is texting her wondering where she is. When she finally does show up, I was prepared for there to be a fight. I was prepared for Hannah to get yelled at, for this to cause some drama. And when it did not happen, I thought it was so refreshing. I was so relieved to see that the show took a different route where it was Garrett was mostly just worried about her because she wasn't answering her text and he didn't know where she was, but it wasn't like he was mad at her for not showing up, which I think is a direction that a lot of other shows usually take with this kind of scene to initiate drama. And I love that the show didn't go that route, and Garrett was more so just worried about if something had happened to her. And I think that is something that is so refreshing to see, which is why I really appreciated that scene.
Another thing I'm kind of liking is the added character of Jules. And I feel like I have to say this because I've been seeing a lot of hate for this character online, and I don't think they are that bad. And I think where they kind of went wrong with the character of Jules is that they didn't give them enough to do. Because they are a brand new character being brought into the fold, I really wanted to see them more be in the fold. And I think we'll get more of that in future seasons. And why I like this addition potentially is because I think the changes to Logan's backstory, making Logan an older sibling and letting us get to know his younger sibling, could be very interesting in regards to the way that he feels like he has to take care of his family because his mom is not capable of taking care of them financially or even emotionally and stuff. And Logan kind of has to be that for Jules. It makes things even more impactful if we get to know Jules. So I think we need to learn more about Jules as a person, as a character, outside of this one thing that we know, which is that they run this hockey account that's gossipy, because that whole plot line of them running the social media account is not my favorite plot line. I don't think we have seen enough of Jules to really know much about their personality outside of them making some snarky comments here and there. My biggest takeaway was that Jules doesn't quite yet feel like a part of the ensemble. They kind of just feel like a side character on the outskirts. I want to see more of their friendships with the other characters, and I also want to see them, outside of the group. And I think more people would like Jules if we got to see a little more of them. Jules mentions connections at the radio station, and we all know that Grace is going to work at the radio station. So if Jules has a nice friendship with Grace, that could be a really fun thing to explore. And finally, to wrap up this video that I hope is not going to be too long, I just want to say some aspects of the actual show itself that I really liked. One being their use of the split screen. I kind of liked it. I know a lot of people don't use split screen very much anymore because they find that it could come off like a bit cheesy and stuff, but I think the show is a little bit cheesy itself and it kind of leans into that, and I like the split screen because anytime they did a split screen it was so fun. Like the very opening of the show is a split screen, and I love that when we see a split screen with Hannah and Garrett, they're kind of on the same wavelength. They do a split screen kind of joke with Allie and Dean when two characters are in a split screen and then it's revealed that they're actually in the same place. I love it every time, even if it's cliche and has been done before. I like the way that they didn't shy away from also putting in those serious topics, and I think they did a good job of doing that. Garrett's dad and stuff I thought was really well done, but also much of Hannah's story I think was really well done. And I was worried, especially when seeing the trailer, how they were going to put this all in. In particular, I really liked the scene where Hannah calls her mom on the phone. Both her mom and dad are so supportive and understanding of her. She still has a lot to work through, and I like that the other characters realize this and understand this and are still supporting her in a show that can at times feel very unserious. It was very sweet and emotional, and I was worried with how some of these plot lines might come across, but I think they did a decent job when exploring these more difficult, more serious topics. And on a bit of a lighter note, I want to just mention the music because the music in this show really took me by surprise. It's almost like the music supervisor was me. And now I think there can be an argument that is made about TV shows like this and movies having possibly a bit too many needle drops because it always feels like song, 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 song. And sometimes I'm like, we don't need all these songs. Why can't we have a score and we only have songs at the big moments? But I will say, if you're gonna have a lot of songs, their choices were pretty excellent. It's almost like they took my Spotify playlists and made it the soundtrack of the show. It was uncanny. So I have to give the music supervisor props for, I guess, having good taste, in my opinion. They didn't just use all big name artists and all popular songs. I like that they threw in a few more smaller, more up and coming artists like a Chloe Keisha, like a Nadia, like a Dog Park, like people that I really enjoy and how I have seen them on the rise. And I like that the show kind of highlighted some of these songs. To start wrapping things up, I just want to talk about some things that I'm interested to see for the future of Off Campus since they are getting immediately back to work and starting to film season 2 already, which I'm so happy about. I'm excited to see in particular more of Tucker because he wasn't really in this season nearly enough. Every time he was on screen, all I could see was Mateo from the pit. And I'm so sorry about it, but I feel like even in the books, Tucker doesn't really have a big personality as much as some of the other characters do. So I am excited to see how that actor decides to play Tucker and what personality he brings to the character. But because of that, and because that he wasn't really in a lot of this season, every time he walked in a room or walked in a scene, it was so jarring because he wasn't wearing scrubs. And I'm like, Mateo, where's your scrubs? Don't you have a shift at the hospital? So for things that I'm excited to see in the future is more Tucker so I can separate him from Mateo. Shout out to the pit. And that concludes this video on Off Campus. Let me know what you thought of the show in general. Am I giving it too high of praise because my expectations were so low? Or did you enjoy yourself too? Also, if there's anything that I didn't mention that you enjoyed or changes that you liked or didn't like, let me know in the comments. I'm interested to see what everybody else thought of Off Campus. With all that being said, I think I'm gonna wrap this up. So if you like this video, be sure to leave me a like. Hype this video if you can. I don't know why that's an option for some people and not for others, but if you really like this video, give me a hype. It helps me out a little bit. Leave me a comment. If you're not already subscribed to me, click on my channel and check out some of my other stuff. I do quite a few different things on this channel, so if you like some of those other things, you might want to subscribe to my channel so you always know when I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one.